The moment I married Lisa, I thought I had found the woman I would spend the rest of my life with. She was smart, funny, and beautiful, a real catch, as my friends would say. We were together for 6 years, and things were great, or so I thought. I was the one who brought home the steady paycheck, and Lisa liked to live it up. But I didn't mind. I trusted her completely, or I wanted to. But lately, things had changed. She was always busy with something. Work, yoga classes, brunches with her girlfriends, trips that seemed a little too frequent. At first, I ignored it, thinking maybe it was just a rough patch. But then, there was the constant phone buzzing, and when I'd ask about it, she'd brush me off. I figured she was stressed, so I gave her space. Turns out that was my biggest mistake. It all started to unravel one evening when I was home late from work. Lisa had already gone to bed by the time I got home. I grabbed a beer, sat on the couch, and tried to unwind. Her phone was on the coffee table, and for whatever reason, I picked it up. I wasn't trying to snoop. Honestly, I was going to put it on the charger for her. But the screen lit up. A text from some guy named Kyle. It wasn't a friendly message either. The first words I saw were, "I can't wait to feel you again." My heart sank, but my brain tried to convince me it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a joke? Maybe this Kyle guy was just being a creep and she hadn't blocked him yet. But something in me, the part of me that had been quietly suspicious for months, told me to dig deeper. So I did, and I found everything. There were texts, so many texts, weeks' worth of messages. Some of them were downright filthy, things I never imagined Lisa would say, not just to another man but at all. The photos, God, those photos. The ones she sent him weren't even the worst part, it was the ones she got. And then, I stumbled upon something even more shocking. Among the photos and the messages, there was a strange email notification from a fertility clinic. At first, I was confused. We hadn't even talked about kids in a serious way. But I opened it, and that's when it all hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just cheating on me with some random guy. She was cheating on me with a dead guy. I know it sounds insane, right? But apparently, her deceased lover, some guy named Nathan she used to date before we met, had left behind sperm samples at the clinic, and she was actively planning to use them to conceive a child. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. Not only was she unfaithful, but she was planning to have another man's baby, behind my back, while pretending to be in this marriage. I was furious, disgusted, humiliated, but mostly I was just numb. Lisa woke up the next morning as if nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, made her coffee, and scrolled through Instagram like her entire life wasn't falling apart. I watched her, pretending to be calm, but I knew. That weekend, she announced she was going on a girls' trip with her friend Rachel. I almost laughed out loud at the absurdity of it all. I knew damn well that Rachel wasn't even in the state. She'd moved to Texas months ago. Still, I didn't say anything. Not yet. I had a plan, and it involved letting her dig her own grave a little deeper. When she finally left for her trip, I wasted no time. I made a call to the fertility clinic. I knew I had no legal right to stop her, but I wanted to confirm what I had read. It was true. She had an appointment set for the following week, and she was going to use Nathan's sperm sample. I was fuming, but I still didn't blow up. Not yet. I waited until she called me from her vacation, acting all chipper like nothing was wrong. She didn't even ask how I was doing. Not a single question about me. She just rattled on about how much fun she was having, how they were out shopping, hitting the beach, all the usual BS. I let her talk, barely listening. Then, when there was a pause, I said it. "The samples from your bastard will arrive at the clinic this week." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear her mind trying to process what I'd just said. "Your appointment with the doctor is already scheduled and paid for by his father." The panic in her voice was instant. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "You heard me," I replied, keeping my voice cold. "I called the clinic. I know everything, Lisa. Every disgusting detail." You thought you could get away with it, didn't you? Well, guess what? I made sure they'll get exactly what they need. Being a single mother is tough work. Good luck." The last thing I heard before hanging up was her unmistakable gasp of horror. It was probably the most satisfying sound I'd heard in months. The truth is, I wasn't ready for how I'd feel after that call. Sure, there was satisfaction, but there was also something else creeping up in my gut. A mix of betrayal and disbelief, like the life I'd been living was all just a carefully crafted lie. I sat in our empty house, thinking about all the times I'd looked at her and thought we were a team, partners in life. Turns out, she was just an actress, playing her part while plotting behind my back. I felt stupid, like a damn fool. How had I not seen it sooner? How had I missed all the signs? The late-night texts, the sudden girls' nights out, the new lingerie that I never saw her wear. It was all right in front of me, but I didn't want to believe it. My mind kept going back to the texts I'd read between her and Kyle. Not only had she been with Nathan, this Kyle dude was also part of the equation. I wondered how many others there had been. Was it just 2, or were there more? How long had she been sneaking around, lying to my face while pretending to be my wife? The anger hit hard and fast. I wanted to scream, to break something, anything. But all I could do was sit there, feeling hollow. The woman I loved wasn't real. She was a mirage, and the life we'd built was nothing but smoke. For the next few days, I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. I could picture her getting excited about using her dead lover's sperm, planning this twisted future where she'd raise his child, while I worked to keep a roof over her head. The whole thing was a sick joke, and I was the punchline. But as the days passed, something else settled in. A sense of clarity. This wasn't on me. This wasn't my fault. I had loved her, trusted her, and she had taken advantage of that. She was the villain here, not me. So I made my decision. There was no way I could stay with her. Divorce was the only option, and I was going to make it painful for her. I started moving money out of our joint account into one only I could access. I talked to a lawyer, someone ruthless, someone who would make sure Lisa didn't get a penny more than she deserved. I even filed a temporary restraining order to keep her away from the house when she came back. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. If she wanted a new life, she could have it, just not with anything of mine. But I didn't stop there. I had one more card to play. You see, Lisa wasn't the only one with secrets. Remember Kyle? The guy she'd been texting? Turns out he wasn't some fling. He was married, too. And his wife was just as clueless as I had been. So I found her, thank you Facebook, and told her everything. Every single detail. The fallout was glorious. Kyle's wife threw him out. Lisa came back from her girls' trip to find the locks changed. And both of them had their lives flipped upside down. The last I heard, Lisa was crashing on a friend's couch, and Kyle was desperately trying to keep his job after his wife sent screenshots of the texts to his boss. When the dust finally settled, and Lisa was officially out of my life, I thought I'd feel triumphant, like I'd won some battle. And for a moment I did. Watching her pack her things in a huff after realizing I'd changed the locks and moved the money was satisfying. No doubt about that. She tried to play the victim, of course. Tears in her eyes, accusing me of being cruel and vindictive. But I didn't let it get to me. I stood there, arms crossed, watching her scramble to figure out where she would go. She wasn't my problem anymore. But once she was really gone, that's when the reality hit me like a sledgehammer. The silence of the house became unbearable. You know that kind of quiet where even your own breathing feels too loud? It was like that. I'd walk from room to room, and all I could see were the ghosts of our life together. The couch where we used to sit and watch movies. The kitchen where she'd pretend to cook while really ordering takeout. The bed, God. The bed, where I used to think we shared something special. But now I couldn't even look at it without imagining her with him. It's funny how the mind works, how it clings to what used to be. Even though I knew she was a manipulative liar, my brain still replayed all the good memories. The trips we took, the holidays, the small moments that felt so real at the time. But every happy memory was tainted now. Twisted. I couldn't remember a single moment without wondering if she was already cheating, already lying to me, already plotting her next move. I spent a lot of nights with a bottle of whiskey, trying to drown out the thoughts. It didn't work. If anything, it made it worse. The anger would bubble up, followed by waves of sadness I hadn't expected. I felt like a failure. How had I not seen the signs earlier? How could I have been so blind? The humiliation was suffocating. Everyone around me had probably seen it coming. Her friends, our neighbors, hell, maybe even my own family had known. And yet, I was the fool who believed she loved me, the fool who thought we were building a future together. The worst part was the mornings. Waking up alone in that house felt like waking up in a graveyard. Everything that had once been vibrant and alive was now dead. Cold. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, thinking I'd heard her voice. But it was just my imagination. Lisa wasn't coming back. And I didn't want her to. Not really. But damn if it didn't hurt like hell anyway. At work, I put on a mask. No one needed to know what I was going through. I told my coworkers Lisa and I had mutually decided to part ways. No one asked too many questions, which I was grateful for. The last thing I needed was pity. But inside, I was crumbling. I couldn't focus. Every time I saw a couple walk by on the street, I felt this pang in my chest, like I was missing out on something, like the whole world was moving forward, and I was stuck, still trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I went through the stages, you know? The classic ones everyone talks about: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But they didn't come in a neat little package. No, they hit me all at once, in waves, overlapping and crashing over me when I least expected it. One minute I'd be fine, thinking, good riddance, I'm better off without her. The next, I'd be furious, wanting to punch something, screaming at the universe for how unfair it all was. Then, out of nowhere, the sadness would creep in, and I'd be sitting on the floor, staring at the wedding photo I hadn't had the guts to throw out yet. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I wanted to, but because my best friend, Mark, practically dragged me there. He'd been there through the whole thing, trying to get me out of the house, trying to keep me from spiraling. I owe him a lot, honestly. He sat with me on those nights when I couldn't sleep, kept me company when the loneliness got too loud. He didn't try to sugarcoat things or tell me everything was going to be fine. He just listened. Sometimes that's all you need, you know? Someone to just be there, not offering advice or solutions, just being present. Therapy helped, but it wasn't some magic fix. I had to do the work. I had to dig through all the mess Lisa had left behind in my mind, sift through the debris of our broken marriage, and try to figure out who I was without her. That's when the anger really set in, the deep, burning rage. She hadn't just cheated on me with some random guy. She'd betrayed me in every possible way. The fertility clinic, her plan to have Nathan's baby behind my back, the lies upon lies. It all felt like a calculated attack. And the fact that she wasn't even sorry? That's what really got to me. When we had that final confrontation, when I threw everything in her face, she didn't even try to apologize. She just acted indignant, like I was the one overreacting. Like I was some obstacle in her grand plan to play house with another man's ghost. She was cold, detached, almost amused by my anger. It was like she had already written me off long before I'd even caught on to what was happening. I realized then that I had been holding onto an illusion. The Lisa I loved, the Lisa I married, had probably never existed. Or maybe she had, but only for a short while. Either way, she was gone now, replaced by this selfish, manipulative stranger who didn't give a damn about me or what she'd done to our marriage. Took time, a lot of time, to stop blaming myself. To stop thinking I could have done something differently, said something differently, that maybe if I had been more attentive or worked less, things would have been different. But deep down, I knew it wasn't my fault. Lisa was always going to be Lisa. No amount of love or effort would have changed that. Slowly, I started to rebuild. I sold the house. I couldn't stay there anymore. Too many memories, too much pain. I moved into a smaller place just for me. I started going out again, reconnecting with old friends, trying to find myself in the middle of all the chaos Lisa had left behind. It wasn't easy, and there are still days when the weight of it all hits me, when I think about her and feel that familiar pang of loss. But those days are fewer now. The anger is fading, the sadness too. I've learned something through all this. People aren't always who they seem to be. Sometimes, the person you think you know best is the one hiding the biggest secret. And as much as it hurts, you can't let it destroy you. You have to pick up the pieces, rebuild, and move on. Because staying stuck in the past, in the betrayal, only gives them more power over you. And Lisa, she doesn't deserve another second of my life. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something similar, it's this: trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore the signs like I did. And when the truth finally comes out, as painful as it is, face it head on. You'll come out stronger on the other side. Now I'm focused on me. I'm not ready to jump into anything new just yet, but I'm hopeful. There's a world out there beyond the lies, beyond the betrayal. I just have to take it one step at a time. Once the initial shock began to wear off, I knew it was time to get serious about moving forward. The house was sold, my finances were squared away, and I was free, at least legally. But emotionally, I was still tethered to the wreckage Lisa had left behind. The rage, the sadness, and even that lingering sense of humiliation were like invisible chains keeping me locked in the past. It was time to break free. I'd made my decision, divorce, no question. But it wasn't just about ending the marriage. I needed to make sure that Lisa felt the full weight of what she had done. And that meant fighting for every last piece of my dignity that she tried to strip away. The lawyer I hired was brutal, exactly what I needed. We filed for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, and I made sure the court knew about every little detail. The affair, the fertility clinic, the dead lover's sperm, all of it. Lisa tried to fight back, of course. She had the audacity to claim that none of it was my business, that her decisions about having a child were personal and didn't involve me. But the judge didn't see it that way. My lawyer made sure of that. In the end, she walked away with almost nothing. The house? Gone. The money? Locked in my accounts. Even the car she'd been driving, my car, was taken from her. I made sure she left the courtroom with less than she came in with. It was petty, sure. But after everything she put me through, it felt justified. But there was one more loose end I needed to tie up. Kyle. He wasn't going to get away scot-free either. I kept in touch with his wife, Michelle. After I blew up their little secret, we started exchanging stories, and let me tell you, Kyle was just as much of a scumbag as Lisa. He wasn't just cheating with her. He had a whole string of side affairs going on. Michelle was devastated, but she was tough, tougher than me in some ways. She filed for divorce too, and Kyle was hit with not only the shame of his double life but also some hefty alimony payments. And here's where the final act of revenge came in. Kyle didn't just lose his marriage, he lost his job. Turns out, Michelle's father is very well connected in the industry Kyle worked in, and after those texts and photos made the rounds, let's just say, Kyle's career was over before it even started. He lost everything, and last I heard, he was living in some crummy apartment on the edge of town, scrambling to make ends meet. It wasn't just about the revenge, though. It was about reclaiming control. For so long, I'd let Lisa and her lies define my reality. But no more. I was taking my life back, piece by piece. And it felt good, better than I'd imagined. Even after the divorce was settled and Kyle's life had imploded, there was still a part of me that felt unfinished. I hadn't seen Lisa in person since she stormed out of our house that day, after realizing I'd locked her out and frozen the accounts. I thought that would be the last time I ever saw her face, but fate, or maybe some twisted form of karma, had other plans. It happened one rainy afternoon, a few months after the divorce was finalized. I was at the grocery store, of all places, just minding my business. I hadn't thought about Lisa much recently. My life had been slowly improving. Therapy was helping, I was reconnecting with old friends, and I'd even started dating again, though nothing serious. Life was finally settling into something normal. And then, as I reached for a box of cereal, there she was. Lisa, standing 2 aisles over, talking to a guy who looked like he couldn't have been more than 25. She hadn't seen me yet, and for a moment, I just stood there, frozen, watching her laugh and flirt like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong, like she hadn't ripped my life apart. The rage that I thought had left me came rushing back in full force. She must have felt my eyes on her, because she turned, and our gazes locked. For a split second, I could see the surprise flicker across her face. But just as quickly, she covered it up with that fake smile I had once been stupid enough to fall for. She left the guy standing there, walking over to me with the kind of confidence only someone utterly shameless could muster. "Well, this is awkward," she said, almost smirking. Awkward? That was the word she chose? I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wasn't going to let her get under my skin. Not again. "How's life as a single mother?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I knew damn well she wasn't raising any kids yet, but I wanted to remind her of what she'd lost. The child she wanted to have with a dead man was still just a fantasy. Her face faltered for the first time. "You didn't need to do all that," she said, her tone suddenly defensive. "You didn't need to ruin everything." I almost laughed. "I ruined everything? Are you serious right now?" I asked, incredulous. "You lied to me for God knows how long. You cheated. You planned to have another man's baby, behind my back. And you're going to stand here and act like I'm the one who ruined things." She crossed her arms, that smug look creeping back onto her face. "You didn't have to make it so hard. You could have just let me go." "Let you go," I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I did let you go, Lisa. I let you go the moment I found out who you really were. But I wasn't about to let you walk away unscathed. Not after what you did." She looked me up and down as if sizing me up for a fight. But there was no real fire behind her eyes. It was all an act. She didn't care anymore. Not really. She'd moved on to her next victim, the poor guy still waiting for her a couple of aisles away. She thought she'd walk away from this conversation like she always had, with a smile, with control. But not this time. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You think you've won because you're standing here with some new guy, pretending like you're over it. But I know you, Lisa. I know you're just as empty inside now as you were the day you tried to hide Nathan's sperm in our future. You're going to keep lying, keep cheating, keep looking for whatever it is you think will fill that void. But you won't find it. You'll end up just as miserable as you made me." Her face twitched, just a flicker of something, maybe fear or guilt, but it was there. I knew I'd hit a nerve. She opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. "Good luck with your new life," I said, turning to walk away. "You're going to need it." As I walked out of the store, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It wasn't a grand, triumphant moment. There were no fireworks, no victory lap. Just a quiet sense of closure. I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already won. She was the one stuck in the past, living in her lies, while I was finally free to move on. Looking back on it now, the whole thing feels like a bad dream. Like I was sleepwalking through my own life, trusting someone who was only ever interested in what they could take from me. Lisa wasn't just a bad wife. She was a master manipulator, someone who used people until there was nothing left, then moved on to the next. But in the end, I'm the one who came out stronger. The hardest part wasn't the divorce or even the betrayal itself. It was rebuilding myself piece by piece, learning to trust again not just others but myself. I had doubted my instincts for so long, convinced myself that the little signs were just my imagination, that I was overreacting. But I wasn't, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's to never ignore your gut feeling. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Life after Lisa hasn't been easy, but it's been mine, and that's what matters. I don't have to wonder anymore about where she is or who she's with. She's a chapter in my past, a lesson learned, and I've moved on. If anyone reading this is in a similar situation, all I can say is, Don't wait for things to get worse. Trust yourself. If your partner is lying, cheating, or making you feel less than, don't waste another minute. You deserve better. You deserve the truth, and you deserve to be free from someone who doesn't value you. As for me, I'm done with that chapter, and I can honestly say, for the first time in years, I'm ready for whatever comes next.